o'clock. I'll call the Muskegon County Board of Commissioners to order for a full board meeting. And we'll start the meeting with an invocation by Commissioner Kinsler.
Let's pray. Father, we come before you and we just thank you today for your mercy and for your love, for your wisdom today, God. Father, as we handle the business of the county, Father, I ask that you'd help us, Father, to move in the right direction, Lord. Give us wisdom on what to do on the decisions that we have to make. Father, and I just thank you also today for a real esteem.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Linda, take the roll, please.
Commissioner Brown,
Please excuse them.
Commissioner Seer,
Here.
Commissioner Hovey Wright,
Here.
Commissioner Hughes.
Here.
Commissioner Laring.
Here.
Vice Chair Nash.
Here.
Commissioner Pago.
Here.
Chairman Skolnick.
Here.
Commissioner Wilkins. Here, 8 present.
Okay. Next item is approval of the agenda.
Second.
We have a motion that's been supported. Is there any comments or corrections, anything on the agenda that's in front of you? If not, we'll do just a voice vote for this on the approval of the agenda. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, agenda is approved. Next item is approval of the special full board meeting minutes of July 20th, 2021.
Someone.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion that's been supported. Is there any comments or corrections on that? If not, yes, ma'am.
I did point out a correction that needed to be made to corporate counsel and to administrator on the closed session minutes. There was
It's a typo on that.
I'm not sure.
Correct, Mike, you addressed that.
Yeah, so the only time minutes can be corrected is at the meeting, following the meeting at which the minutes were taken. Absent that, there's no authority to correct minutes.
So we have to wait till we go to closed session next time.
Well, so it's an interesting question because closed session minutes have to be kept for 1 year and 1 day and then would be destroyed anyways. So I'm not sure that any error or technical error in those closed session minutes will have any implication on anything anyways, because they're not disclosable without absent a court order. So, and after a year and a day, they're destroyed as a matter of course under the open meetings act. So typically, like if, let's take the fact that if they were not closed session minutes, for example, because this has actually occurred where you have minutes of a meeting, next meeting comes around, you don't correct those. Second meeting after somebody notices there's a problem with those minutes. You can't correct them, but you can certainly bring the error to the attention in those minutes. Okay, subsequent. So it's not a correction of the prior minutes, which have been approved, but it's a notation in subsequent minutes that there's an error in these minutes, which is permissible under the OMA. In this case, though, because you can adjourn to closed session to discuss corrections to minutes, but not in this case because they didn't occur at that meeting following the meeting at which they were taken. That makes sense.
So, Mr. Chair, I have a question. Is this actually, are you talking about the closed session or the special full board meeting minutes?
There was minutes presented to us at the special full board last week.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
And
Okay.
because of the situation that we had presented, they were passed out like literally a minute before
Okay.
chair called the meeting to order, and I did not read them
Oh,
through.
I see.
And
I remember
then
that.
when I did see the mistake, there was, we were already in the middle of our meeting, so I waited till the end to just, to bring that to the attention, so.
Marshall,
Yeah, so does it have to be corrected at the next closed session meeting or the whatever meeting we get those minutes approved?
Well, I don't think they're, because you only have the opportunity to correct even closed session minutes at the meeting after which the minutes were taken, you're outside of that parameter. And so I would submit that you cannot go back to closed session to correct minutes that you don't have the ability to correct pursuant to statute.
So we really can't correct them.
No.
Mrs. Bagel, I don't remember what the correction was. Was it substantial?
There was a correction in closed meeting minutes. The word not should have been removed. Make what you say was correct.
I believe so.
So what do you suggest?
Well,
What did you change?
yeah,
It doesn't change anything.
Well, in the context of the sentence, it potentially actually has a significant meaning, but we can't discuss it, so.
yeah, I agree so there's actually case law on this where the time period to approve minutes is unlimited. There is no statutory time period to approve them, but there is for correction and it has to occur. At
I
the meeting.
understand.
Yeah.
That was the first time I've been presented minutes
I
in
will
such a
say-
fashion in an envelope. I had no idea what was going on until like the meeting was going on, so.
I will say to the extent that the county administrator has described the error, those could be included in these open session minutes of this meeting, right?
Okay.
So,
I would be satisfied with that.
okay.
That's our only option, so.
All right, so we're back on the approval of the special full board meeting minutes of July 20th. Was that,
July 15th.
did somebody make the motion?
Yes.
Okay. We didn't vote on it yet.
Meeting was July 15th.
It was the 20th. That was an error in that one you have.
Oh, I had the
The
wrong
special
one. Yeah, okay.
All right, so we'll do voice vote on that. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, those special full board meeting minutes are approved. Next item is public comment on an agenda item. I don't know if there's anybody on the call.
I don't see anybody.
You know that we have State Representative Van Workum. Greg, is it something you want to speak about, something that's on the agenda?
Nothing on there.
Okay. Is there anybody?
No.
All right, next up is a presentation by Dr. Joyce DeYoung, the Muskegon County Medical Examiner. Always look forward to this every year.
It is for me at least. So I thank you for having me again here. I think that I see a lot of familiar faces here, but I always like to briefly kind of mention a little bit about what the medical examiner's office does, and I promise I'll keep this whole presentation brief. But that oftentimes we think about what the medical examiner does and everybody thinks about autopsies, and that is a big part of what we do. But we also have a team of investigators right here in Muskegon County. We have transporters right here in Muskegon County. But the investigators, when a death is reported to our office, we have an investigator that responds to the scene, and they're supposed to be there within an hour. So even though we're based down in Kalamazoo, they're all here, and they get to the scene and they investigate it. In some cases, it requires a postmortem examination, and so they'll arrange with our transporter to bring the decedent down to Kalamazoo, and that's when the exam is done. But most of the time, fortunately, it's a natural death that can be released directly to the funeral home. With that, they have conversations 24/7, 365. We have a forensic pathologist, one of 6 of us who are on call. And so we'll take a call at whatever time that is to discuss the case and make sure that it's okay to send it directly to the funeral home. Other things that we're doing in some of those cases, we end up having to complete the death certificate because maybe it was somebody who hadn't been to their physician in a couple of years and there's nobody else to do that. We also review every cremation permit that occurs. And so anytime something is going to be cremated, those all come through our office for a review of that death and approval as well. So those are, sort of a big part. We do have, a big office. It's rather complicated. I actually am I serve as the medical examiner for 13 counties in Michigan. So it's kind of, it's busy. I've been the medical examiner for Muskegon since 2000, so been around a little while. It's my favorite county. I don't say that to every county, okay? I do love this place. Anyway, yeah, you get it, right? It's like this little gem. Anyway, so you have the annual report in front of you, and we always put all the counties in there. There's only 12 there because Cass County is one that we just started this year. That's where we got our 13. But I put all of them in there because people always want to know what's happening in other counties nearby or counties that are of similar size. So at least you have something to compare it to. 2020 is a year that was very interesting from the standpoint of deaths. It was our busiest year ever. And a lot of that is just reflected in the fact that if you look at how many deaths occurred just from 2019 to 2020, the number of just all the deaths that occurred in the county were up by 20%. And that other number is pretty stable. I mean, so if you kind of look on what number, I'm on page 51, but if you look at that top line, things kind of, they creep up a little bit probably as population increases or whatever that is. But there's a big jump from 2019 to 2020. And that means that there were a lot more deaths reported to us, and the number of deaths investigated also jumped by 20%. I think what's really interesting about this, though, is that if you look at how many bodies actually were transported down to Kalamazoo for some type of exam, meaning whether it was an accident, suicide, homicide, or maybe a natural death where it was of a younger person, where there was no medical history, that stayed pretty stable. It actually dropped from 2019 to 2020. So most of the deaths where we saw these increases were natural deaths. I don't have, not every death is reported to our office. So we get that overall number. We actually get that from the clerk's office, and we kind of verify it later as that's confirmed. So that's a figure that we can just say, yes, there was an increase. Probably a significant number of those were COVID-related fatalities, but some of them may not have been COVID, but may have been, some other natural disease, and maybe somebody didn't seek medical care. But there was clearly, whatever the case is, and I don't want to speculate. I think those numbers will come out eventually, but there clearly is a significant increase in 2020. Unfortunately, I don't feel like we're seeing a big drop off yet in 2021. I'm kind of hoping that would start happening, but that is sort of where we are. I think a lot of the other numbers are fairly they're fairly stable and interesting. Probably the thing that I looked through Muskegon County, the piece that really, if anything, it sort of is troubling is that if you look at accidental deaths. That the number of drug-related fatalities was the highest ever that we've seen in Muskegon County, and that's over on page 54, where it went from 46 to 57, and that's clearly something that we're seeing in so many of our counties, especially the counties we have of our larger counties. I think Kalamazoo is our largest, and followed by Muskegon. We have Calhoun and Berrien, which are kind of the four that have sort of larger cities in them and higher populations. We're in all of those counties, we're really seeing a significant increase in accidental drug-related deaths. So I think that certainly is of interest. There was some concern that suicides were going to be up overall. I don't think that was something that we saw. I don't think we really didn't see a lot of that in any of our counties. In fact, they went from in 2019, they were 23. In 2020, we had 25 suicides. So that isn't, sometimes you'll hear speculation on the news that, because of COVID and the shutdowns that everybody's, suicides are way high. They were up in a couple of our counties. I was just in Allegan last week, and Allegan saw a bit of a significant increase, but we're not seeing that so much in here in Muskegon. The other report that you have is sort of interesting, and this is like all drug-related deaths. We were funded by the state to have somebody in our office actually look at all the drug-related deaths because it is a huge problem. It's a huge problem nationally, and it's a huge problem in so many of our communities. And so we have somebody who is I call her the DRUD analyst. It's the deaths related to opioids and other drugs analyst. But Ms. Chloe Bilby does this. She has her master's in public health, and she is one that looks through all of these drug-related deaths and to really pull out what are the factors and what are the influences and what are the risk factors and what's happening in these individuals. Ideally, this is fed to the state, ideally with, and to anybody else who wants it, but to develop efforts to drop those numbers. I think one of the, when we look through all of these and so many of them have minor, so many of these does have minor children and have other, they have families and it's just something that really hopefully is that would be a number that we really need to spend some time on and focus on getting that down. And so there's a lot of effort going into that. So that's sort of another, and both of these reports are really good if you're having trouble sleeping at night and just want these numbers. But I think too, I always like to say that there's a lot of numbers and there's a lot of data in here, but every single one of those numbers and every death there's a family on the other side of them. And we don't lose sight of that. We try to keep that in our focus. I also would like to add, like I mentioned, we work out of the medical school in Kalamazoo, downtown Kalamazoo, where we have a really state-of-the-art, beautiful, funded, donated facility. It was through donors who are making this medical school. And they donated all of the equipment and the facility for us to do this work in 4 communities in Michigan. And the county administrator has been there. We had an open morgue one night when we had expanded, and he brought his wife there on a date. So I don't know if you want to talk about that a little bit with him, his choices and where he brings his wife. But he actually mentioned, he brought it up again tonight and said, it was actually really valuable for him to come and see that. And you always have them, if you ever want to come and see the facility, I encourage you to do that. I think it's valuable. I think it's good to see the place where people from your community are cared for. I think that when I've had other county commissioners come from other counties, they actually walk away feeling somewhat relieved and they feel good. And I had one commissioner from Van Buren said, "I'm not afraid to die anymore." And I said, well, I don't know how you do that for everybody, but he felt really comfortable with seeing what he saw and talking to the people and realizing how we're pretty focused on taking care of not only the decedents with great respect, but then we try our best as well to work with the families and reach out to them and get them the answers. We're having we're having problems in the department or in the office, like so many places are, with staffing, finding people. It's hard. We have 6 forensic pathologists now, but 2 of them are leaving. One of them is going to go off and be the chief medical examiner for the state of Arkansas, which is really good for him. But and he is a great leader. He'll be great there. But it's a huge loss for us, and it's really hard to recruit because there's a big shortage of forensic pathologists. But we're working on it, and so things are sort of moving along. So, are there any questions about the report or the office?
I have one question. Is this information available online too?
It is. Yep. If you go to I wonder if our website is listed here. But if not, I will get that to you. It's MI Medical Examiner. Oh, if you go to the page 2, okay, and you see where it says mimedicalexaminer.com at the bottom,
Okay.
then if when you get there, you go to the page that says special reports or annual reports and special reports. It's all there as well.
Oh, thank you.
Please feel to distribute it widely. I mean, I think the more that people have that information, the better. Yeah, right. It's valuable.
Marcia.
Yes.
I'm noticing page 55 that there's 21 suicides in 2020 by males and 4 by females. How do you explain the difference, the big difference there between males and females?
Well, that's interesting. So I think that one of the things that we see is that, and this has sort of been the case for a long time, is that males tend to use more definitive means, meaning gun or hanging, and females tend to make more suicide attempts through pills and things. And that's not always, it's not a, we certainly see suicides by women with firearms. But that still is the tendency, is that it's more definitive means that men use, and so they are more often successful.
So it
Unfortunately,
doesn't have to do with not seeking treatment.
I don't know. I don't know the answer to that. I could look into that. I'm not sure.
That's okay.
Yeah,
I was just
okay, but it is sort of, yeah.
Okay, anybody else? Thank you, Dr.
All right, thank you.
Kathy, do you want to add anything or?
Just that, it's Kathy Moore, Public Health Director. It's just been a pleasure working with Dr. DeYoung. This is your board, your decision to appoint the medical examiner every 4 years. So last year, November, we renewed the contract with Dr. DeYoung and the medical school. We have saw many benefits through the school in Kalamazoo, because they're also training students. As she said, the donation of the state-of-the-art equipment that was donated. And so as a result, the Kalamazoo, Dr. DeYoung's office actually reduced the cost for the next 4 years by a fraction of a percent of what you approved. So we are seeing savings there. Also, with the number of cremation permits, we have seen a almost triple number over the last 5 years in cremations compared to just burials. And so we have the revenue from that as well. So that is shared by both public health and Dr. DeYoung's office, because we process the cremation permits in our building.
Okay, thank you, Kathy. Thank you.
Can I just add one last thing? Maybe you saw in the news that the medical school was donated, they received a $300 billion donation just within the past couple months. And the focus of that donation is to increase the diversity within our medical profession. And that is the primary focus of this medical school. Now it's really transforming to that, so that the people, the physicians that we are producing will look like the people that they're caring for. And it's, I think if you watch this, you'll see, and ideally it will be a significant benefit in the state of Michigan, in all of our communities, but it's for inclusivity and increased diversity in the physicians that we're producing out of the medical school. So hopefully somehow that will also benefit your community. So it's good, but thank you so much.
Mr. Chair, may I ask a question?
Yes, ma'am.
Who is the source of that donation?
It was anonymous from a group of donors. It was actually, the total donation was $550 million. 200 million went to Western Michigan University, 50 million went to the athletics department, and 300 million to the medical school.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay. We'll move on to committee and board reports. First one is community development and strategic planning. And
That is the
Susie,
Community Development and Strategic Planning Committee met on July 20th, 2021. It was recommended, and I move CDSP 221, 07, 17, 18, and 19.
okay, so Commissioner Williams made the motion, Wilson, Commissioner Wilkins supported it. Are there any discussion on that? If not, Linda, can we do a roll call on this, please?
Commissioner Seer,
Yes, on 17, 18, and 19.
Commissioner Hovey Wright,
Yes on all?
Commissioner Hughes,
Yes on all.
Commissioner Laring,
Yes on all.
Vice Chair Nash,
Yes on all.
Commissioner Pago,
Yes on all.
Commissioner Wilkins,
Yes on all.
Commissioner Skolnick,
Yes, or no?
that's 8 yes on 17, 8 yes on 18 and 8 yes on 19.
Okay, thank you, Linda.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. That completes my report.
Thank you, Commissioner Hughes. All right, moving on, the final committee report is Ways and Means. Chair of that committee is Commissioner Stewart.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The Ways and Means Committee met on July 20th, 2021. It was recommended, and I move on WM 21/07-74, 75, and 76.
Support.
All right, we have a motion that's been supported for those three items. Is there any discussion, comments, corrections, anything?
Chair, I have a question. if I may.
Yes, sir.
Item 75, I saw Matt Farrell in the room. Can you give us an update as there is Brenda Miller agreed to this now, or she will sign it or not?
Matt Farrell, Public Works, she has not signed it yet. The administrator and I are meeting with her next week.
Next week, I believe. Correct.
Opinion?
Pardon?
Do you have an opinion? Will she sign it or proceed with this now?
Based on your action you took here to pass this, I think that really entices.
Thank you.
Okay, anybody else? If not, Linda, we'll read a roll call on this.
Mr. Chair,
Yes,
I did want to respond on number 76.
okay.
Even though it had support to move to this level, I think we're already seeing how many problems it's causing as far as schedule. So I still have a no vote for that.
Anybody else have any comments on that? Because now we got a problem with work sessions.
That's my point. This is causing more problems than what it's
So
worth.
there's been some, we're trying to work this out, but
Mr. Chair,
yes.
when I made that motion for 3 o'clock, I had forgotten that your meetings previously, previous years was actually at 3:30. I wouldn't necessarily be opposed to change to 3:30 if that helps accommodate.
I think that.
That's what you guys did for a couple years before that.
The problem with the work sessions are, whatever we do with those, it's gonna, there's implications for a number of us. So,
I supported her motion and I would support 332. And we did that for many, many years.
can we change that?
We'd have to vote this down and.
No, we have to amend it.
It's just an amendment. I'm just, I guess, discussing, would that help alleviate whatever Commissioner Nash, 3:30 was the time you guys had for years before.
I think what we were trying to do was keep, some of the meetings were just lasting until 7 o'clock, so we're trying to solve that, but that would help a little, but the 3 o'clock makes it so the work sessions are gonna end up being in the morning, which some people can't do.
But we can do work sessions in the evening then, after the meetings.
But then we got the problems with keeping the building open and it's, you have to have somebody at the door and it's
It's
staff.
never gonna be a perfect scenario.
Well, I
The
know.
work has to be done.
Yes, Marcia.
Could we have work sessions at 2? Is there a problem with that?
Yeah, there's at least one commissioner works.
Oh, right.
Yeah, we have a problem.
Well, I think we need to be mindful that people have jobs, including commissioners.
Well, but when we started, we were at 3 o'clock or 3:30, so
Let's move it back to 3:30.
I don't have
See
a
what
problem.
happens. So
Would that help enough,
Council.
Charles?
I don't know why we're moving anything.
I couldn't hear that.
I'm not even sure why we're moving anything. I mean, everything was running fine. We're gonna move it a half hour, it's not gonna make much difference. But, I mean, it doesn't matter to me. I mean, this board
Can
has
we
to
do a
decide.
friendly amendment?
We can keep it at 3 o'clock if it doesn't matter to him. I mean,
I'm not gonna make it about me, because it's not about me, it's about the board. Like I said, I think things will move fine. If we decide we want to move to 3:30, it's up to this board. I just vote on not moving anything, so I'll vote no on everything.
Okay.
might as well leave it at 3 o'clock then, Susan.
that's fine.
Okay,
Somebody,
all right, so we've got, as it stands now, it's to have the committee and board meetings start at 3 p.m.
We have to vote on it.
I know, but Linda needs to take the roll.
Commissioner Heavy Right,
Yes on 74 and 75, no on 76.
Commissioner Hughes,
Yes, on all.
Commissioner Larry,
Yes, on all.
Vice Chair Nash,
Yes on 74, yes on 75, and no on 76.
Commissioner Pago,
Yes on all.
Commissioner Wilkins,
Yes, on all.
Commissioner Seer,
Yes and all.
and Chairman Skolnick.
Yes, on all.
When does this start?
It would start the next meeting, which is not Thursday, the following, so it's next Tuesday.
8 on 74,
Okay.
8 on 74, 8 on 75, 6 yes on 76, 2 no on 76.
Okay, thank you, Linda. Next item is the committee
Chair,
liaison
that
reports and the
concludes my
chairman's
report.
report. I don't, let me show you.
I'm good. That concludes my report.
I'm sorry. Thank you, Commissioner Smith. All right, committee liaison reports. Does anyone have any reports they would like to give on the liaison? Nobody?
Would that be Windsor Dick? Would that be okay? I was at a meeting yesterday with that group. They have their 50th anniversary. They were going to have a big party. Of course, COVID squashed the party. So what they did was put together a color glossy pamphlet with a lot of really good information in it, particularly if you're not familiar with what Windsor Dick does, and I wasn't all that much. So it's very helpful, but I'm sure they have these available. So
I think she's gonna be, Erin is gonna be presenting to
Is she
the
going?
county.
Okay.
Yeah, and we'll be all getting those.
Okay, anybody else? I would, I don't see it on here, but unless Commissioner Laring wants to say something about the county fair starts this week. I think. But isn't the county fair starting this week?
Yesterday.
Start already.
it's in progress.
And
Through
the-
Saturday.
The sheriff's steak fry is
Thursday.
Thursday. Okay. All right, then we have, next up is the administrator's report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have one item for consideration, and that is to move into a termination agreement between the county and Muskegon and Executive Air Transport effective July 31st, 2021, 11:59 p.m. And authorize the board chair to sign the agreement.
Support.
All right, we have a motion from supported. This is just kind of closing up what we did at the last meeting with the new fixed base operator. Is there any comments or discussions on that? If not, we probably should have a roll call on this. It's important.
Commissioner Hughes,
Yes.
Commissioner Larry,
Yes.
Vice Chair Nash,
Yes.
Commissioner Pago,
Yes.
Commissioner Wilkins. Yes. Commissioner Seer,
Yes.
Commissioner Hovey Wright,
Yes.
Chairman Skolnick.
Yes,
8 yes.
thank you. All right, there's no unfinished business, I don't think, and we'll move on to new business. Does anyone have any business to bring forward at this meeting?
I just have one item, and that's the calendar I laid in front of you. Some options for work sessions. We're gonna have more than normal just because the American Rescue Plan is before us, and we have to make some decisions on which way we want to use those dollars with best for the community and for the county. So I put some dates that are available. We need some ideas on if those dates don't work, what other time slots that would work. And we don't necessarily have to have a work session in this building. So that might help too. We could do work sessions somewhere else if we don't do it on a Tuesday, Thursday. So some suggestions on there was Monday, Wednesday mornings, or Monday, Wednesday late afternoons, or just work late on the days, Tuesday and Thursdays that we have board meetings. But ideally, the whole reason, like we said earlier, to move away from that was to keep the front doors manned for the whole time. So just keep in mind that we do work sessions at other locations.
Could,
Do we vote on whether we want the morning or the afternoon?
Well, I'd like to have some discussion. From that discussion,
Yeah, I would much prefer the afternoon.
Afternoon.
I think so too.
And I think that would accommodate Mr. Nash as well.
No,
Oh, it won't? Is the morning better?
no.
How about if we did this? How about if the commissioners, Kathy and Kristen, send out an email to everybody and just respond with your thoughts. Maybe you can do, you have access to one of those polls, like a Google poll or whatever they are, and see what works. But I know it's not gonna work for everybody, no matter what we do. Unless this American Rescue Plan there's work right now, but it's not gonna be forever. I mean, there's a short time.
Right, I mean, we have a lot to get through it.
There'll
We
be
still
other
wait-
work sections,
right.
but there's a lot.
Mark,
crammed
can we
in.
do this on Zoom?
Yeah, that was my question.
I asked our corporate counsel that question earlier, and what we decided that depends on whether or not we left the state of emergency for the county in place or not.
Correct. That's absolutely right.
Could you say that again? I couldn't hear.
We can't do Zoom because we rescinded the state of emergency.
Right.
So we can't do that unless
Okay, so
we,
it's an official board meeting.
unless we redo the state of emergency. And I don't.
We're
think
not,
we're
do
gonna
we
do
vote
it.
during work session?
I'm sorry.
Because we're voting during work sessions, isn't
Yeah,
it?
it doesn't matter
Okay.
whether you vote or not vote. It has to do with
It's a public meeting.
the OMA
Okay.
and being a public body. That's right. The only other exception is, well, the only three exceptions. One, if there's a state of emergency. Two is if a medical condition prevents you from
An
attending in
individual.
person. Yeah. And three is if you're deployed on military service.
Or you don't have a quorum?
Well, if you
could
don't have
meet
a
if you didn't
quorum,
have a quorum.
if you don't have a quorum, you don't have a meeting.
Can you, sorry, Mr. Chair,
Yes. go ahead.
can you cite the statute in the OMA that work sessions are covered under the OMA? I don't.
Are they the same as a regular board?
Yes, so we, it's not so much the meeting in and of itself, it's the public body, right? Because the OMA applies to public bodies, not to the content of the meetings. If that
And we
makes
would all be
sense.
together at one time.
Correct. So if you're a public body, then you're subject to the OMA if you're having a meeting. A meeting constitutes even deliberation on public policy, which is clearly would be on how to spend ARP funds. So
So I want to follow up to that. So in the past, maybe not this year, but in the past, we've all met at MAC conference and those aren't covered under OMA.
correct. So educational conferences are treated differently for purposes of the OMA because those conferences don't typically involve deliberation on public policy. They are educational conferences where you receive information, but there's no formal deliberation on public policy.
Okay.
Or at least it should not be.
Yeah, why don't we, Kathy, could you just send a message out, let people just make comments on it? Because one thing, say we had some meetings in the evening at the Med Center or someplace like that, or even moving around the county.
What's your names?
I'm sorry,
Your house?
can I have it at my house? Sure.
On your boat.
There you go.
Somebody's gotta bring a paddle boat.
Next, you're gonna want alcohol.
No. An official meetings.
Anyway, we'll work this out. You have
So there are
instructions.
eight different options? Do we have to meet 8 times?
I
4
believe
days.
4, for sure. 4 is gonna take you, Matt and the staff have to get to 2 more, the 2-hour long, and then I've left 4 hours for the public who's asked for consideration as well.
Marcia,
Nonprofits?
Correct.
It's a lot of money to decide.
Oh, I know. Yeah,
It is.
it's important. Yeah.
I'd like to, could we just ask right now, is mornings or afternoons gonna work better for most people? So we can kind of get a feel for that.
Charles, you can't do mornings, right?
No, I can't do evenings.
You can't do evenings.
After when?
These Mondays and Wednesdays won't work.
From 4 to 6, okay.
Okay, could you, when Kathy sends that out, could you just send that? All right,
I'm hoping that if we have to do that, we'll just split them, maybe 2 in the morning, 2 in the
yeah,
evening.
we'll make it work.
Something.
All right, so is there any other new business? If not, Now we have time for public comment. Mr. Van Workum.
Thank you, Commissioner Skolnick. Thank you, Board of Commissioners. My name is Greg North of the North Shores. And I do have the honor of serving as a state representative for half of Muskegon County. Wanted to just give a quick update on things going on. I'm guessing particularly on the board's mind is revenue sharing, as it's important as you guys are relating to the previous conversation on the ARPA dollars that are coming by. We are also debating those dollars at the state level, which has proven a little bit difficult. Sometimes it's actually easier to make cuts than it is to figure out how to do the spending when you have a little extra dollars to work with. So that is ongoing. We did pass a budget for the education side, so the student aid budget is complete, and actually got words of encouragement from our superintendents locally. So that's always good because they also have a budget year that begins July 1st. But we're still continuing our effort to get that budget completed, but with those extra funds, we're trying to make sure that we're using them wisely and working on some transformative projects for the state. Working on some different projects, particularly what I'm hearing from folks and employers around town is the difficulty to find labor right now. And you're seeing businesses close, and it's not because of lack of customers, it's because of lack of finding workers that can work those hours. And you're just seeing those odd hours right now. So working on some legislation related to work search in relation to Michigan Works and our unemployment insurance agency to try and get people out searching for work so that becomes their first time or their full-time job as they are on unemployment. I think you're going to hear more about the unemployment insurance agency. There's probably several of your constituents. I don't know if you've heard from them, but the unemployment insurance agency sent out about 650,000 letters saying that they want some of the money back. So we're working on that. This is a fault of the unemployment insurance agency. This is not the fault of any constituent. So we're working on that to find some remedies. But just the entire process with unemployment insurance agency has been a nightmare for some. I just got a note from another constituent that's been dealing with it since April. It's been difficult. It's time for some improvements there, and I believe I will be working on that. I know my time was short, so I just wanted to give a quick update, say hello. It's been one of the first times on Tuesday that I'm back, and it's a beautiful day in Norton Shores, isn't it, Commissioner Skolnick?
Thanks.
Always a beautiful day. Want me to answer any questions? Yes.
Can you tell me what kind of, what specific type of steps are taken for that? Because I've got some constituents who've been dealing with that since February, March. They haven't gotten anything straightened out.
Yeah, please contact either my office or Representative Sabo's office or Senator Bumstead's office with the case information. Have them contact us. There is a process, but as you know, it's pretty intensive, not intensive, but difficult, long, because you're always on the phone waiting for someone, hoping that somebody will answer on the other end. So we try and help constituents work through that process. But if you want to refer them to our office or the other, or Representative Sable or Bumstead, we'll be happy to try and help and assist them.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Rick. Yeah.
I have public comment from Judge Pittman.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, Commissioners. I'm here in a different capacity. I'm here as the chairman of the Muskegon Oceana Community Action Partnership. And I want you to be interested in an issue that we're dealing with here. The CARES Act that you all are talking about with all the monies that have been distributed. Muskegon Community Act, or MOCAP as it's called, is a community action that should be receiving monies from the state of Michigan, from the federal government through the state of Michigan as a result of those expenditures that were approved now last year. For some reason, Department of Health and Human Services is holding that money away from MOCAP. They're holding it in contravention of what the federal law calls for. We have tried to get an answer as to why we're not getting that money. It's about $500,000 that should be coming to MOCAP to serve constituents in each and every one of your areas that you come from. We are part of the community social safety net. We provide for eviction protection. We provide for rent assistance. We provide for utility payments. We feed people in this community. And for what I believe an arbitrary reason, they are withholding those funds. And I want you to be interested in that. And I want you to ask the question to the Bureau, as it's called, BCAEO, Bureau of Community Action and Economic Opportunity in Lansing. Why are they continuing to hold that money when the federal statutes call for that money to be released to MOCAP, as it should every other CAA that functions here in the state of Michigan? Every one of you have constituents who are being affected by the lack of that money in this community. I want you to be interested. I want you to ask the question. Thank you. Certainly.
Yeah, Judge, could you give the contact information and the details of what we need to say? The departments and the amount of money and the everything we need to say, and have that sent to all of us?
I absolutely will make sure that that gets to you. I'll send it to your office, Ms. Eisenbarth. The person you want to talk to is named Chris Shanow, and she is in the Bureau of Community Action and Economic Opportunity. She is the director. She's the person who has had the last say in regards to not providing that funding. I've asked that question of her, and she's given very, very arbitrary answers to that question.
Judge, I have another question. How long has it been since you've had any funding? Have they stopped it and you're not getting funding right now?
Well, that's a tricky question. We have been engaged in an incredibly difficult relationship with them for years. And they are fairly inconsistent in how they provide the fundings that come from the federal government through that office to our organization. But here is a situation where they have absolutely just made the decision that they were not going to release that funding to MOCAP here again, after asking the question for no good apparent reason. It's certainly nothing that is justifiable by the federal statutes that they're supposed to adhere to, nor to the administrative rules that have been created as a result here in the state of Michigan. Yes.
What % of your budget is that money?
Well, it's a huge percent right now because they have continued to slash our budget over years during the course of this very difficult relationship that MOCAP has had with the Bureau. And all of those questions have been asked. I believe Commissioner Skolnick serves on the state's commission that has some responsibility, or at least some connection to what the Bureau and the CAAs under the Bureau's administrative rule would have.
So that's your fault, Bob, is that what we're finding?
Well, there hasn't been a meeting in a long time. So, and we don't necessarily get updates on that. That commission is a lot more than just this. And I've heard a little bit about this over the years, but I'm not qualified to comment on it right now because I don't know.
No, I would not expect that Mr. Skolnick would be able to comment on that, but he's certainly aware of the people who are involved. The Bureau has been trying to shut MOCAP down since 2011. They ramped those efforts up in 2014. I became the chairman of that board in 2016 when they went full ahead with those efforts, and we've been fighting that fight ever since, and certainly you're aware of that, Commissioner Skolnick. And of late, they are using, I think, that as the pretense for not giving the monies that should come to MOCAP. And it's not supported. We have a opinion from what an organization called CAP Law, which is a federal or a law agency that interprets the community action agency statutes and provides opinions to those who are involved with them, that says that there's absolutely no justification for the withholding of those funds pursuant to what current federal and state law would call for. Yes.
And I'm trying to remember, through those changes after 16, wasn't this like a tri-county support too? Not just Muskegon County?
I'm not quite certain what you're referring to. Here's what
Because I thought they were changing it more to more of a regional service. And that's why I was wondering if that's still that way. How can we get the other counties involved to help with this situation?
I guess the answer to that question would be there is no legitimate effort to, I guess, consolidate or put other counties into. This is solely an issue related to Muskegon Oceana Community Action Partnership. We serve Muskegon and Oceana counties.
Right.
And this is all particular to just MOCAP.
Right.
And there is really no place for any other community action agency to be a part of the difficulty or to help with the concern that is being voiced by us here with you today. So there's no help if people don't ask the question of people who I believe are making simply arbitrary decisions based on whatever they choose to make those decisions on. They're not following the law.
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
So given your legal expertise, what action of recourse would you recommend? I mean, I'm not familiar at all with this organization, but there's got to be some sort of recourse, I would imagine, to pursue.
Well, that's where you get into the, I'm sure corporate counsel could tell you, that's where you get into the maze of what is legal, what is administrative. Have you exhausted all of your administrative remedies before you can get to a legal remedy? That's a place where I think this has kind of gotten stuck a little bit. But I want to be very clear. The simple question has been asked of the people who are making this decision. Why are you withholding this money? The simple answer that we've received after being ignored after 3 requests for an answer on the 4th request was because we believe you're not in good standing. We've asked for the definition of what do you mean by good standing and show us where that exists within these federal statutes or the administrative rules that have been promulgated as a result of those federal statutes. It's nowhere so far as we've researched it. CAP law has looked at it and says, we don't know what that really means. The law is very clear, however, that until a CAA is what's called de-designated, which is this process that they're going through now to de-designate MOCAP, until you're de-designated, you have the right to be funded in the same manner as other CAAs. That's why we continue to receive, although very inconsistently, we receive the monies that we have been approved for as part of our regular yearly budget. When this special expenditure of money comes from the federal government through the CARES Act, they make the arbitrary decision, however, you're not in good standing, we're not going to give you that money. The effect to our budget is we operate on about a $1.2, $1.3 million budget. What's that? A third more money? But more importantly, that's a third more money that's not getting into this community because somebody in Lansing just made the decision that we're just not going to give it to you.
So is there an allocation guideline where they're obligated legally to allocate that? Or is
Yes.
that their decision that they have power to decide that they're not going to?
Yes, it's called the federal statutes that say that as long as until you are de-designated, you are designated. If you're designated, You are funded like every other CAA. is
So does the
funded.
MOCAP have their own legal counsel that's pursuing the
Oh, yeah,
recourse?
oh, yeah. We got legal counsel. But the issue, and why I brought it here and why I brought it in this manner, is that if no light ever gets put on this issue in Lansing, then
I
they get to
understand.
simply, let me finish. They simply get to do what they choose to do. But you all have constituents who are coming to our agency. This is the executive director, this young man back here. They're coming to this agency on a daily basis and being turned away. The need still exists regardless of whether people in Lansing decide that they like us enough to go ahead and give us the money that the federal government has already said is money that should go to MOCAP. And I'm exercised about it. I really am. I'm exercised about it. Not only have they made the decision, they won't answer the question. And then they choose to ignore it because it's only us asking them. Well, if people here who have influence, and I hate that Representative Van Werkum left, Representative Sabo is involved now. Senator Stafford's office is now involved. If people who have influence and have the concern start asking that question, somebody's going to have to start answering that question. Yes.
Judge, I think it would be very beneficial if the executive director would come up and explain to us exactly what MOCAP is providing, because I've been involved with MOCAP for years. And until all that came about, we got abolished pretty much without even understanding how that worked. But I do know a lot of constituents that receive services. And these
MOCAP
are
has
much,
existed here in Muskegon County since 1955.
they're much needed services. They provide a lot of different things that people need in this community. And it would be a disservice, not only to abolish it, but also, I mean, withholding those funds, because it could be a great asset to a lot of people that need these services right now.
Commissioner Nash, let me share one thing with you. I know you've given me way more time than public comment deserves, but part of the de-designation process calls for, and it is required, that the Bureau make the highest leveled, and it's pretty bad language, but the highest leveled governmental entity in a community where the agency serves of at least 100,000 people, 100,000 or more. They have to make you aware that they are intending to de-designate you. Did any of you hear that? No, you didn't. Why? Because they didn't do it. They did not give the notice that is required in the administrative rules to do the de-designation process. They're supposed to consult with that entity to make them aware so you can then make comment on whether or not you believe that de-designation should or should not occur. You didn't hear that because they didn't do it. That's how they have operated with us. They are arbitrary and capricious in what rules they choose to follow and choose not to follow. They are convenient with what they consider the facts that are worthy of being shared and not being shared. And I'm saying a whole lot publicly, but this isn't anything that I haven't said privately.
Okay, Judge, we still have a closed session.
I'm sure you do.
Could we get a work session on this instead, of being in public comment? I think we need to know more about it and know who to contact, what to do.
Well, if you can send an email.
I will.
with that
Yeah, could you do that?
information,
Yeah,
I'll
okay.
provide that.
That'd be great.
And I am available if for any reason, any of you choose to ask questions about this. I'm absolutely available. I'll be glad to answer whatever I can. And I thank you for getting interested in this on behalf of people who need to be served in this community. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you, Judge. All right, final board comments. Anything? If not, I need a motion to go into closed session.
I make a motion to go into closed session pursuant to MCL 15.286 for strategic and negotiated sessions connected with negotiations of the collective bargaining agreement if either party requests a closed session.
Second.
Okay, we've had a motion to go into closed session. It's been supported. Can I get a voice vote for that? I think I can. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
I think Mike is telling us no.
Roll call. Roll call. Okay, so I tried this.
Yeah, you tried. Nice job.
Okay.
Commissioner Laring,
Yes.
Vice Chair Nash,
Yes.
Commissioner Pago,
Yes.
Commissioner Wilkins. Yes. Commissioner Seer,
Yes.
Commissioner Heavy Wright,
Yes.
Commissioner Hughes.
Yes.
Chairman Skolnick.
Yes.
8 yes.
Okay. So we need to